Hello, welcome to Project Likkutei Torah, Daf Nun Tes of Parshas Chukas, Ois Daled of the Biaor on the Maimer Zeis Chukas Torah. And now we can understand the whole Inyan of Tola'at Shani, this crimson dyed red wool thread that was thrown into the fire during the while the parah was being burnt. Because we know that oilas, the idea of burning, is the same oisius, has the same letters as toila, and it has the same gematria as the rishit tevis of the first line of Ana b'chayach gedulas minachatat etzrua, which represents chesed shebegvuros, and that's the whole Inyan of Tola'at Yaakov, a pasuk in Yeshaya that the Jewish people are compared to the worm of Jacob. The whole idea is להקריב עולת, to bring the korban oila. The word להקריב also, if you reverse switch around the letters, it also means להקריב, to rot. It's through the worms eating the tree, is able to rot the tree and cause it to fall down. The Ramaz in Parshas writes that the name Gevura, the reason why this worm, Tola'at Shani, this worm Tola, is connected to Gevura because it's successful at separating Kedusha from Tuma, and to elevate the holiness above, as is written in Parshas Maseh with regards to the Membeis Masais, that the whole purpose of the Membeis Masais is to subjugate the klippas and to elevate it to holiness, as it is written, specifically through causing the enemies to spread and to be destroyed and to be subjugated. That's why the Membeis Masais is specifically the same number, 42, as the letters of the rishit tevis of Ana b'chayach, which is Hashem's name, 42-letter name. This Inyan in the verse Hashem, as the sages say, just like a worm is able to chop down a tree just with his mouth, just by eating and carving out the wood with his mouth, and rotting the wood with his mouth, able to chop down the largest cedar tree. So to the Jewish people, we have tefila, we have davening. Through the davening that we say with the words of our mouth, we're able to accomplish the greatest, loftiest accomplishments. As it is explained also in the Parshas Maseh, how in Kriyas Shema and Tefillah we are able to cause this elevation of these 42 journeys, these Membeis Masais, the Jewish people. However, in truth, this level of Tola'at Yaakov refers to דיבור, specifically learning Torah with one's mouth. As the sages say with regards to David and Melech, that when David and Melech would sit and learn Torah, he would appear weak like a worm. So what does that mean? The Torah is called strength, but the speaking words of Torah gives him oiz and koyach to the nefesh elokis. He's able to ascend and be included in the Ein Sof. However, it weakens the koyach of the nefesh habamis, so that prevents one's soul from cleaving to Hashem. So when it's said in Moed Katan that David and Melech would be weakened like a telas, it was not that the nefesh elokis would be weakened, it's that the nefesh habamis would be weakened to allow the nefesh elokis to cleave to Hashem through his speaking words of Torah. And this is the idea, the level of olas tamid, that olas is the same letters as toila, if you switch around the letters, which it's brought down in Gemara that, according to one opinion, according to Rabbi Lazar in the Gemara, that in Chagiga, that on Har Sinai, even on Har Sinai itself, the korban oila, the burnt offering, was brought. So that shows a very intrinsic connection to this korban, this oilas tamid, to Kabbalah Torah and Har Sinai. That it gave the koyach to speak the word of Hashem in this world. That's what Kabbalah Torah is all about. And just like the worm uses its mouth, the oila, which is the same letters as worm, tol'a, gave the koyach on Har Sinai for the Jewish people through Moshe, and then by which the Jewish people to speak the word of Hashem practically in this world. That's why it says in the pasuk right before the דיבור, וידבר אלוקים is called the very ha'ela lemor, that Hashem spoke these words to Jewish people, saying that the lemor means that we have that koyach to speak the words of Hashem. And this is the explanation of the ana b'choyach gedulas mincha tatir tzurura, that is written Yemincha vaya nedari b'koyach mincha vaya tirtz oyev, that through the right side, which is adorned with koyach, with strength, which is the taida, as it is written kol vaya b'koyach, the voice of Hashem is with strength, because the taida is derived from chachma, and the right, which is chesed, receives from chachma. Through this davka, tirtz oyev, that the Yetzer Hara, our enemy, the Yetzer Hara, will be obliterated, and because from the perspective of Atzmos Ein Sof, Hashem's essence, we know that Hashem's essence can tolerate holiness and unholiness. For example, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, like the pasuk in Mishlei, Smamis Bedem Tesapes, that's Hashem grasped the lizard or the spider with his hands, even though it's still found in the palace of the king, implying that the Ein's Atzmos Ein Sof is able to tolerate negative, just like he's able to say Amar Oyev Erdei Fasi, that is able to take the enemy head on. So there's from the perspective of Atzmos Ein Sof, there's a certain level of inter-inclusivity of being able to tolerate positivity and negativity mixed together. However, what does Torah accomplish? The Torah, which is Hashem's chachma, and chachma means berur, we know that chachma refines. It basically, what it does is it helps separate the good from the bad. It makes it possible to appreciate that, to cause the good to rise and the negativity to descend and go away. As it is written in Pasuk Vadia, Misham Ayridcha Ne'um Hashem. Hashem says that I will cause you to descend. But the word Ne'um is speech. Ne'um, which is that represents the idea of speaking words of Torah. That's why Chachma is called Din. As the Rizal writes, the level of Gevura, of Atik, is enclosed in Mechas Tima, coming here to teach us that Chachma is really rooted in a very supernal, lofty level of Gevura. This is what it means, that through the right, which is adorned with the strength and the koyach, gedulas of Hashem, which is the Torah, and which is the kol Yaakov, through this tatetzrua and tiratz oyev, and this is the level of telas Yaakov, which is able to be shemake mrkiv ha'eres, able to completely cause the tree to rot, and that's why the next line of Ana has the Rishitevis cross Satan, that the Satan should be obliterated, as it's alluded to in the pasuk in Tehillim, Yichlu Saitnei Nafshi. Now, this inyan of Ein Koiche El Bafiv, the Diבור, Davkid, Isis Torah and Tefila, as explained earlier, that the Diבור is Nimshach from the level of Keser, which is the level of Medaber, because the beginning is wedged in the end. And in parentheses, the Alter Rebbe alludes to certain elements of that, how Malchus is connected to the level of Teilas Yaakov, but also Tiferes is connected to the same inyan, and really, which is also connected to Keser through the Kavim Tzai. So we see how the beginning Keser and Diבור are wedged into each other, one within the other. And that's in the way that it's written in Micha, that Tarim Yadcha Al Tzarecha V'chol Eivecha Karisu, that through the raising of Hashem's figurative hand, Kivyachal, the Yad Harama, which is the level of Keser, it's able to Nimshach V'chol Eivecha Karisu, as it is written also with regards to Yetzias Mitzrayim, V'nei Yisrael Yetzim Biad Rama. This is also written V'haya Kasher Yarim Moshe Yadav V'Gavar Yisrael Chulei, that when Moshe's hands were raised, the Jewish people would be victorious. And also, as it is written, Rama Yadcha Bal Yechizayun Hasarim Al Yerumu Chulei. Different prasukim showing this inyan of the upraised hands affecting the pa'ula of being able to get rid of the enemy. The inyan is, as it is explained in the pasuk Migos Aster V'Kachaman of Vushves Asus, how that through man arousing in his soul this level of gaze to kedusha, this arrogance on the level of holiness, positive pride, that he won't want to mashpil himself in Taivas Olam Hazeh. Through this, it's aroused above this level of Kigoiga, that Targum Unklas on the pasuk Kigoiga is Isgi'i Algiv Sanaya. I mean, he's even arrogance over the level of arrogance, meaning to say that he's completely removed from people that are arrogant for negative reasons. His pride, so to speak, is so much more sophisticated and loftier than the people that are prideful and arrogant for selfish reasons. I mean, that the wicked people, they say, Yadenu Rama V'lei Hashem Palko Zeis. They have this lofty arrogance without the effect of, without Hashem being involved, without the bittul of it to Hashem. Like Paro, it says by Paro, Liya Erivan Yasisini. That Paro thought he was the Nile. He was in denial, so to speak. Therefore, it says Ki Ga'a, regards to the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf, that all of the Geim, all of these arrogant Mitzrayim, were hishpil into that they were able to drown. And through this, it made it possible for the shvalim, for the people, the Jews that were on a low level, to be uplifted. And that's through this level of Ga'ah, Hashem on this highest, loftiest level of pride. And we know what kind of damage that unhealthy arrogance can accomplish. That because of a person's greatness and stature in society, that can cause them to descend further into klippas and sitra achra, because they think that they are untouchable and they are so great. So that's why we need this level of ga'ah to be prideful over the arrogant, so in order to ensure that this won't happen. And this is what it means, Havaya Rama Yadcha Bal Yechazayin, that when Rama Yadcha, through this, Bal Yechazayin, and it appears, explain this according to that which is written in the Rizal, that Avadim Hayinu the Farai, that Farai is the same letters as Eiref, so that's the Indian of Eiref of Arach Anpin, the chitzonius of Arach Anpin, within chitzonius of Keser. It's the sitra achra, so to speak, that specifically from this level of Eiref and the acharaim of Keser, that's how Paro is able to reach this, draw down this sitra achra and unikis chitzonium, because he had unhealthy pride, unhealthy arrogance. Li Ya'iri, he thought he was the Nile. He created the Nile, but this is not the case when the Geus is nimshach from the level of panim, because it's written Yair vaya panav elecha davka, that this is what means Rama Yadcha, that it's nimshach from this level of panim, which is pnimius, which is the opposite of this acharaim. So when you have this pnimius, then you have this level of bali chazayin, that they're able to wipe away our enemies and only good things. And one can also say, moving on to the next column, that the explanation of Gaiga is through a Dynamic Flies, meaning to say that even the level of Pella is considered, like, from Hashem's perspective, the lowest level of Asiya, physical Asiya Gashmias. It is written, Oisei Fella, that Hashem does Pella, meaning to say that the level of Asiya is equal to the level of Pella. The highest is connected to the lowest. But specifically because Hashem is on this level of Gaiga. And this level is called Atik Yamin, that Hashem is completely beyond Hamisnasimi Misailam, which is this level, very lofty level that is within Keser, called Stima Dechol Stimin, as is written in the Zohar with regards to Kriyas Yamsuf, but Tikut Misa. Also, so all the story of Kriyas Yamsuf is all rooted in Hashem's level of Atik, of Pnimis, of Keser. Because the level of Atik is Pnimis Keser, as he says here, that everything is panim, and there's no level of acharaim at all, and therefore it's called Gaiga. So that's why you have the two levels of Geus. The first level of Gea is, as the Targum says, al gave sanaya. That from this first level of geus, there's no unika for the klippas and the rishaim. That they're unika from their gedula, that their unika comes inside their gedulasai, their greatness. However, nevertheless, is only from the level of acharayim. And since this level doesn't have shaykh any level of acharayim at all, that b'meila, it's impossible to have unika. And this is what it means, that through the greatness of the Hashem's gainus, it's the same, which is the same level as that from this level, for sure, one can shatter and crush the enemy. Taris kamecha. That from there it's impossible to have any unikus chatzeni once the taris kamecha is accomplished. And this is also the which is explained in another place, explain the words Yisa vaya panav ilacha, that Yisa vayagbia panav, that through the brachas kayanim, that through the pnimius of panim, of panav, that there's no level of acharayim at all, and therefore the hashpa can be given elacha dafka, that there could be a direct hashpa without any gesach tzenim. This is what it means, Ram Venisa, Mashpa Game, etc. Koyamar Ram Venisa, etc. Besdaka Ushval Ruach, Chule. Because Rama Yadcha, through Rama Yadcha, Davka, then Bali Chazayin. And also one can say that Yad Rama is Tiferes B'Keser, etc., that the Tiferes ascends all the way to Keser. Oila that from all this it's understood this whole Inyan of Telas Yaakov, which is the idea of speaking words of Torah and tefillah, that its source is from the level that we mentioned, the Mamshech, this level of Pnimis HaKeser, as it explains, by explaining the words in explaining Chukas Torah, as is explained in Igeres HaKodesh in Tanya, that with regards to the Inyan of the Luchais, that they're called Mishnei Evrehem, meaning to say that their source is from the level of Atikim, that they're all on this level of Panim, and they don't have this level of Acharayim at all. And also, so this can all be understood by where it says that the Torah is compared to Mashal Kadmaini, the primordial mashal, that in order that this or is revealed in the level of Kadmaini Shel Olam, which is higher than the level of Sev Kalamim and Mamal Kalamim, this is specifically through the Torah, which is this level of mashal and a lavush to this level. And these Rosh Tevis, Ana B'Chayach, is the Gematria Tolע, as we explained earlier. And the Rosh Tevis of the last line of Ana B'Chayach, Shavaseinu Kabel, this is the Gematria of Tola'as. So now we're going to explain here that the Tol'a and Tola'as actually represent two different levels in Avodas Hashem. That we have Tol'a represents Isis Torah, and Tola'as represents Isis Tefila, because the Koyach of Ana B'Choyach Gdus Mincha refers to letters of Torah, and Shavasinu Kabel, that's the Inyan of Tefila, because it's the idea of asking Hashem that He accept our supplications. And we can explain that in koiche el befiv, because also l'mayla by Hashem says das ganis bepuma, that knowledge is concealed in his mouth. This is written in Mishlei mi piv das, etc. And this is the whole Indian of throwing this red dyed wool string into the shrifat apara, the shnitei las, because the shrifat apara, the whole purpose of it is to return the unika, to reverse this unique sachitonian process, meaning to say that we are refining klippas nega in that there's no unique sachitonian there, and therefore in order that no further unika should occur. And this, we have the shnitei las, that the shnitei las is essentially, spiritually, it prevented any further rotting or cessation, it forced a cessation of any further nikis. Now, moving on to the third column, Amud Gimel of Daf Nun Tes, and chapter 5, Ois Hey of the Biur. This is the Inyan of Chukas Torah Lashon Chakika. That the whole Inyan is, Chakika is much greater than letters written in cloth. And therefore, with regards to the luchos, it's written Charus al luchos, that the luchos drew down this very lofty level called Oisius Chakika, and from there is Nimshach Nislabish, this level of Oisius Iksav, the lower level of written ink on parchment. And by the Paraduma it says Zeis Chukas HaTorah, this is the Chayk of the Torah, which is Lashon Chakika, that in it and through it we draw down this level of Chukas HaTorah in order so that this lofty level of Chakika should be Nimshach Lamata. And this is what it means, Asher Tziva Havaya, that Havaya commanded. They should have this level of Tzav Chibur from Shem Havaya of Atik, that it's on the level of Oisius Chakika, which is this union of Lamor, which is the idea of drawing down these lofty levels into Chachma, which is the level of Torah Shebechsav. And in truth, this level, is called Chukas Torah, meaning the Inyan of Oisius Chakika Lamaila is much loftier than the practical letters that were physically engraved in the physical luchos. Even though the letters of the luchos had engraved in them these engraved letters into the tablets, and we have the mila of engraved words, that the words are mineu bei with the stone, meaning there's no separation between the letters and the surface it's written on. Nevertheless, there is a chisaron in chakika, in the actual physical written tablets, in the sense that there's pieces of stone that are missing. There's a lacking in the shlemus of the stone that it's written on, because in order to do the engraving, you have to etch out part of the stone. So it shows on a certain chisaron in the luchos. But on the theoretical level, which is higher in its source, this Inyan of Chukas Torah is actually sourced all the way in Orin Seif Baruch Hu, where the Indian is that even as we're in the Zayhar Beresh Hormanusa de Malka Galif Glifu Bethiro Ilah, that in this primordial Ratzain of Hashem, the king, there's this Inyan of engraving of this lofty light of Hashem to the world, this idea of Galif, which is Chakika, that we know that in Parshas Tetzaveh, with regards to the kalim of the Kohen Gadol, upitachta olav pituche chaysam, that specifically the Targum used the word v'tigloif, this galifa, this inyan of chakika, which is this inyan we're talking about, which is that, just like by way of analogy, one that engraves in a very precious stone, whichever letters or symbols he engraves, in the place of the chakika, there's actually a chesarn in the sense that you don't see as much illumination and shine in that place where you engraved. To such an extent that one can argue that there's a certain level of darkening, a little bit of a darkening in the light where the letters are engraved. And so too, by way of analogy, by the nimshal, by the analog, that when the Ein Sof is ne'etzal, meaning to say that it comes down into Atzilus, into the level of Keser, which is the level of Pratsufei Atik V'Arich. This is an example of this Chakika process Baruchnias. It's called this, when Ein Sof is Natsal, it's called Galif Galifu. The Chakika is Mineu Bey, meaning it's an direct expression. Keser is a direct expression of the Ein Sof, because it's still called Ein Sof, and it's much higher than the world of Atzilus. However, nevertheless, compared to Ein Sof, Keser still has a chesaron, just like the engraved letters have the chesaron, that they're a little bit darker. It's called cheshach. Keser is called cheshach compared to Ein Sof, as it is written to Kinei Zayar, that Kisrei la afagav di'ilu ertzach ukam kadam ilas ilas. That Keser, even though it's a very lofty, bright light, it's still dark, very dark compared to the level of Ein Sof. Now contrast this to Isis Aksav through regular ink on parchment, that the ink is completely foreign to the cloth, to the parchment. Also, the ink is black, and it conceals the whiteness of the cloth that's under the ink, to such an extent that you don't even see the whiteness of the cloth at all after you apply the ink. This is the level of Cahnman Bina of Atzilus, that in the slapshus of Torah, in Cahnman Bina, as the Maimer says, Ereisim Cahnman Nafkas, called Tersh B'chsav, is the mashal of Isis Aksav, as we explained, that the Chachma is like physical Asiya compared to Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which is completely exalted, completely beyond the essence of the category of Chachma. And this is to such an extent that it appears that the Chachma is almost concealing the Ein Sof, just like the ink conceals, the black ink conceals the whiteness of the cloth. And by the fact that it appears that the ink and the cloth are two completely different things, that it appears that Chachma and Ein Sof are completely separate concepts from each other, but really one comes from the other. And the great analogy to understand this concept is the idea of Gilui HaSeichel, that manifesting and revealing one's intellect from the deep recesses, innermost part of one's mind, in essence, requires heavy amounts of concealment on the person's part in order to convey these ideas to someone else, whether speaking the words, speaking this intellectual concepts, or writing them down. It requires immense amounts of concealment to such an extent that it almost appears foreign to the source of that intellect, even though it really comes from it. Which is connected to the idea that the written Torah is compared to a black fire that is written on top of a white fire. That just like the letters from ink conceal the whiteness of the cloth that's under it, so too, by the analog, that which is nimshach from this Ein Sof, which is this white fire, in order for it to be properly internalized and comprehended in Chachma Bina within Atzilus, this is such a great Hester and Hela that the Ein Sof, it's not shaykh to have any hasaga and avan at all, but through the tzimtzum, but specifically through the tzimtzum of or. And after all this, we can understand why the red heifer, the paraduma, is called the Chukas Torah. That through the Ratzav Shuv of the Parah and the Mayim Chaim, as he explains, that through all this we're able to be mamshech, this level of Oisius HaChakika, which is this lofty level of Atik and Arich of Atzilus. And to this, Shlomo Melech Alav Shalom says, Amarti ech kama v'hi rechayk mimeni, in Koheles, that is very lofty and distant from Chachma Atzilus. Rather, that through this we can be mamshech, have this hamshacha of Or of Atik and Arich into Chachma Bina. And this is also the explanation of Chukas Torah, that we should be nimshach, that the Torah should be nimshach from its source into the level of Galif Galifu B'Tiri La, this level of Chakika, engraving, to enclose itself, and to reveal itself into the Torah Shabbat, which is Chachman Bina of Atzilus, which is Ashatziva via Lemar Canal. Yeshakarach, we finished the daf Nun Tes, and we're going to move on and finish the beer, the last ice of the beer, Vav, ice of Vav tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.